Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second week of the 30-day metabolic reset. I hope you enjoyed the video from last week. I know it's the middle of the day, so most of you can't join us live, but I'm here again with Jen and Coach Jen, and talking this week about the autophagy phase. And so if you don't know what autophagy is, the term actually means self-eating. And this is the phase when you are going through metabolic reset, when your body starts to clean up the dead or damaged cells and recycle those. And so that's a process of self-eating. Kind of that's where the word comes from. And in that recycling process, you're cleaning up a lot of cellular debris and any cells that maybe aren't functioning optimally. And so you're in this, you'll start to shift into this 18-6 intermittent fasting. So you'll have a 6-hour window in which you're eating. And, one of the things the last time we did this, that a number of the people who were familiar with the intermittent fasting but tried to kind of shift their eating to earlier in the day rather than later in the day, I think you will find that that actually does benefit your sleep if you have that last meal of the day earlier in the day. And maybe you should speak to that, Jen, because I know that was one of the shifts you made.
I think this was my favorite part when I did this for the first time. One of my favorite parts of the 30 days was because it wasn't so stressful or difficult. It was just a matter of moving the eating window up and more following. In hindsight, I realized I was following a better circadian rhythm. And moving my workouts to earlier in the day so that I could fuel for them. That took a day or two to fuel properly for workouts. But getting up early, and not just getting up, but getting outside early was the key for me. And because the better you sleep, the earlier you go to bed, the better it just snowballs in a positive, momentous way the next day.
Yeah, and I think like so many people in our kind of hustle bustle, they are rushing around, and if you don't plan ahead, then you're often eating that last eating window is late in the day rather than earlier in the day. And it's really probably the best idea to have your last meal at least 3 hours before you go to bed. I know a lot of these programs, and I think even in Ben's, he says at least 2 hours, but I think it's really much better if you've had at least 3 hours of digestion before you go to bed, because you want to be moved into that rest and digest phase and not still having your gut basically breaking down food and working on all of that when you're going to sleep. What you want it to do when you go to sleep is to start that phase, that autophagy phase of cleaning up. And, when you are sleeping at night, there's something called the glymphatic system, which is also on a rhythm of kind of a pulsing rhythm. And that is what is moving the trash out through the cerebrospinal fluid and out into, lymph, and everything is moving out the waste, so that then when you wake up in the morning, you eliminate the waste, ideally, and all is good. So there was also a little hack I sort of found this week because I'm actually traveling and I'm doing the more extended fasting because I've done this before. And so I'll include a link to the video by, I have to look up his name again, Thomas DeLauer. And he is talking about olive oil as a bit of a hack. If you are doing a longer term fast, you can have olive oil, and that will help kick off this autophagy process. And if you're going to do that, you want a really high quality olive oil that's high in polyphenols. And the way that you can tell that is it will have kind of a peppery, a little bit of a burning sensation in the back of your throat when you drink the olive oil. And that, I think, like I would get up in the morning and have 2 teaspoons of olive oil. And then about every 2 or 3 hours, I had a little more olive oil. And I just really wasn't that, I mean, it really curbed the appetite as well, which was kind of surprising for me, and made the whole process much easier. I don't know. Have you ever tried that, Jen?
I've never tried it, but I will definitely remember that tip. It sounds satisfying. I love olive oil.
Yeah, well, one of the things about so much of the olive oil that's on the market now is you have to be pretty careful of what your source is, because the mass produced olive oil, they often cut it with a cheaper oil, a canola or some kind of a seed oil. And so you have to be really mindful that you are getting a quality olive oil, but those can be quite expensive. So if you start drinking a whole bottle, but I guess if you're not eating, it's probably a cheaper budget anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Another tip I thought of was one of the things, at least, that helped me and a few others, is that play around with at least moving your big meal of the day to much earlier in the day. Perhaps that's your first meal, is your cooked meats, if you're grilling something or planning a nice meal, have that be your lunch or your late breakfast. And then have that next meal be a light, dinner, or I think they used to call it supper. Like people historically used to eat this way. And so if you can't just completely eliminate an early evening meal, have it be the light meal. And it's okay to use this time to experiment, see what works for you, see if you have any data collection, like the Aura Ring or a Whoop, or any sort of way to track your state of your nervous system. See how that goes for you, or CGM, of course. See how that goes.
Yeah, I think it's, because I do think, different people react differently to fasting or intermittent fasting. I mean, we're not doing a long-term fast, but I was actually talking to somebody actually is Morley Robbins, because I think he's either doing a conference call or like a podcast with or something, August Dunning. And I don't know if you remember, but back when we talked about we went through a couple of fasting books in the book club, and that was one of the ones I shared with people. It wasn't the one we did for the book club, but he has a book called the Phoenix Protocol. And he has done the long-term dry fasting where there's, no liquids, no food, nothing. And I did that once for 4 days, and it was very interesting, because I could absolutely tell on day 3 that autophagy had kicked off and my bone marrow was making new stem cells, because like you can feel this. I mean, it's kind of painful across your iliac crest. You can feel the bone marrow generation of the new stem cells.
Amazing.
So that was kind of interesting. So I wonder about something like that and some of these new supplements that are supposed to stimulate stem cells.
Mm-hmm.
There's one called Stem Regen, and I think a company called Qualia has one. And there are a lot of different herb mixtures that are supposed to stimulate that, but I think that the intermittent fasting and the autophagy kind of does that naturally, which is probably better for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't forget the power of exercise, because exercise also increases or, improves autophagy. But then with some tighter eating windows, it's just a guarantee 1-2 punch to increase that.
Right. Well, and breathing, and I'm trying to remember. I don't have the book with me because I'm on the road, whether there's anything in the book about breathing. So I know, this particular 30-day reset is for the spirituality and health audience, and they're probably much more well-versed in breathing. But, I just finished a 4-week yoga class, and part of that we were doing breathing, and I just noticed the difference in having a daily morning breathing practice. Not even doesn't even have to be a long time. Let's say 5 minutes of breathing, or sometimes even less than that. And today I was hauling it across the Chicago airport to make my connection. And, my lung capacity, everything just felt so much better just from having, I think, been doing a month worth of breathing exercises, and also being mindful of that whenever stress comes up, stop and do the breathing. So,
do you have a favorite breath work exercise that you like?
well, so I have one that I do in the morning that is like yoga coffee, but my yoga instructor said there are some contraindications if you're like, I'm postmenopausal, so it wouldn't be an issue for me. But if you are not postmenopausal, you should look at the cautions around it about what time of the month not to do it. But it's called a bellows breath. And so you're lifting, so you do that for like 50 breaths. So it's like you're basically pumping, but as you lift up, you're, really expanding your lungs and then pushing the air out. And then after that, the last 2 breaths, or let's say the last 10 breaths, you really accelerate. And then you slow. Those last 2 are kind of slow. And then sit there for a minute, and you can just feel the energy and the oxygen moving throughout your cells. And when I was kind of looking for instructors on that breath, one of them was talking about like when you've been sleeping all night, and a lot of people have some kind of apnea or something, and so you're not as oxygenated when you wake up, so you might be a little hypoxic. And so then when you do breathing like that, you are really super oxygenating your blood and kind of waking all the cells up and say,
I think we froze. Martha, can you hear me? You're frozen on my screen.
I don't know how much of that you got, because
It froze on my end.
Did it freeze right when I was starting the breathing?
No, right. No, I got that part, but then your explanation.
Oh, well, so basically
you're hypoxic, and
you're hypoxic. And then when you do that breathing, it's pulling that oxygen back in and delivering it to all the cells all around your body, and kind of waking them up and saying, hey, time to get out of bed. And like for me, I really didn't want coffee as much. So, that was kind of an interesting take for me.
I know there's so much we can do, that we have the power to, engage or promote or just fix in our bodies with the right tools.
Yeah. Alternate nostril breathing is the other one, but I do find in the morning when I wake up, that's often harder for me.
Oh,
I will often have one nostril that is a little stopped up.
Yeah.
And, it's a little more stressful to try to breathe out that nostril when you're doing alternate nostril breathing. But
yeah, well, and that could be a great time too for people who are reading the whole book. Benazati talks a lot about vitamin G. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I talked about that. Yeah. So vitamin G is vitamin gratitude. And so that's a great part of your daily practice, is to just wake up and be filled with gratitude. Be grateful for the day. kind of sit for a moment and just think about all the things that you're grateful for, or even just one thing that you're grateful for. But that sort of sets that positive tone for the day. And so, even in trying times, we all have some things we can be grateful for. And, I wake up every morning and think about all the things that I'm grateful for, especially my children.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
there's somebody calling about yogurt. But so do you do a vitamin G in the morning?
I do. Mine is wrapped up in my breath work, but in the cold plunge. So as I'm hovering above my little horse trough that I fill with ice and water, I do a little gratitude that I am lucky that I get to do this. And
You're lucky that you're not going to freeze to death.
I know I'm not going to freeze to death. I do know it's uncomfortable, very uncomfortable, but I feel very fortunate that I get to be in my backyard under a beautiful walnut tree and watch the sky and watch the tree. And then I do the plunge and then it takes one breath. So there's the response. And I know that this call isn't about cold plunge, but for me, that's the best way that I start my day. And within one breath, I control moving from a sympathetic to a parasympathetic state. And then I just do slow, easy breath work. And I feel quite
energized.
No, not even energized, just chill, just mellow. I'm for 3 or 4 minutes, depending on the temperature of the water. I have those 3 or 4 minutes of just total like calm breath work. So there's no it's not an emergency. None of it's an emergency. It all feels very therapeutic, at least for me. And then I feel great. And then the rest of the day, there's nothing I can't take on because I just did the hardest thing
Of your day.
of my
That's
day.
interesting. So what's the temperature of your water?
Well, today, because it's gotten cold here, it was right at 49 degrees. And the lowest I've ever gone is 46. So I'm really a fan of a eustress model of cold plunge rather than distress. So I don't stay in to the point of shivering. I get out before I can tell my muscles are going to start contracting and shivering. Once you start to shiver, you are moving into a more of just burning glycogen stores rather than fat. So one of the things about cold exposure is it plays a role in converting, I believe it's T4 to T3. And I hope I don't have that backwards. But there's a really strong fat burning conversion and brown fat, converting white subcutaneous fat into the metabolically active brown fat. Brown fat is the one kind of fat that we really would like to increase in our body. And so that's,
yeah. I had a great story from somebody I knew who one of her good friends was in the Polar Bear Club in San Francisco. So they swam in the San Francisco Bay, which that seems a little toxic to me. But anyway, they swam in the San Francisco Bay several times a week. And she swam without a wetsuit.
okay.
And she started to get that it's like the kind of brown fat is that subcutaneous right underneath the skin fat. And she had developed this whole layer of this, which was kind of interesting. And she didn't like it. So she started wearing a wetsuit. But, that was 15 years ago. So, probably now, if she knew how important brown fat is for keeping you thin, actually, maybe she'd have a different opinion. And then I was listening actually on the plane today to a discussion by Dr. Alexis Jasmine, who talks about light and circadian clocks. And she was talking about, she actually does a cold plunge at 55 degrees. So not as cold, but she stays in for 30 minutes so that she gets her core body temperature, not just the surface layers cool.
Sure, sure.
I thought that was kind of interesting. I'm not doing either of those. I do a cold shower, but
Well, I think that's almost analogous to like an infrared sauna, where the heat is much lower than a traditional Finnish sauna, but you're inducing that inside out heat, almost like a fever. So you want it to go in deeper than
Right.
surface. So I wonder if that's kind of similar principle. A little warmer in the cold realm. And
so
still,
yeah,
yeah.
that makes sense. Well, I think we've gone a little far afield of week number 2, but just as a reminder for your week 2, you are doing low carb keto style meals with clean fat and protein. You've got some resources that we've provided previously for that. If you can't find them, feel free to email us, or you can post a link. You can post a comment in the YouTube channel where we'll have the replay, and someone will check there and can answer as well if you can't find what you're looking for. And then your intermittent fasting window. So your 18 hours of fasting and 6 hours is your eating window. So you'll want to be finished with the meal in that 6-hour window.
Yeah, and if anyone has any questions or needs a little support, feel free to email us. I think we've posted the emails.
And we can do that again. And if you're interested in coaching again, if you start to do this and you're either, uncertain about whether or not, you are getting the results you want to get, or if you feel like you'd like to take it to a deeper level, then, by all means, Jen is so well versed and experienced in all of this. I mean, she's a great coach, and I would definitely recommend, just try it out for a month and see how you do. Because I think you'll find that having that accountability support, as well as somebody with just the deep knowledge to kind of walk you along the path, can be really helpful.
Thanks, Martha.
All right. Well, I'm going to sign off here, and we will see you next week. And let's see, next week. So I'm in Austin, Texas this week at the Business of Biohacking. And on Monday next week, I'll be at an ALS conference in Las Vegas. There's actually the Cure ALS. It's a patient-led group, but they are having some really remarkable reversals of ALS. And a lot of that is through diet, nutrition, and mindfulness, and some of these more natural approaches where, our typical medical system has kind of left people with ALS with really no answers at all. And so these patients have, I was thinking back, we were looking at, I don't know if anybody remembers the Ice Bucket Challenge, but all those years ago, the Ice Bucket Challenge, there's been so much progress in ALS. So I'm excited to go to that conference, but I will be speaking to you from Las Vegas next week. So
Great. Happy travels, Martha.
thanks, Jen. Good to see you.